And there it is. It should be working. And hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I am waiting for YouTube to pick up the picture. I hope we don't have an issue with the... There it is. There it is. OBS, but everything's working good. I don't know why it was black for me, but it's now showing everything's working good. And I am here with Otto, and we're going to talk to Otto about yesterday's game and his World War II system. And you can see how the Soviets masterfully just smashed these powerful German formations, the most elite um, fifth-rate Luftwaffe rear guard soldiers, cooks, uh, orderlies.
Supported by 1897 French artillery guns.
Yeah, they could muster, and boy was it tough, but we managed. um, yeah, no, it was a really fun scenario, Otto. Let's see here. Well, prior to this, you had this really cool Napoleonic system that was just absolutely rocking. It still rocks. It's a great system. We've all enjoyed playing it. But then at some point you decided let's do World War II. Why the change? Were you just ready for a new challenge, or what was the scoop on that?
Um, well, I saw that a lot of people. I think it was. I've always wanted to host something else than Napoleonic as well, and I thought that there was a lot of um, World War II games being hosted around. It was starting to be kind of a cool new thing, and the way that how I started with my Napoleonic system is that I first waited for people to host Napoleonic games, and then I would kind of gather ideas from their systems and see what problems they had and
Mm-hmm.
what they thought would need to be improved and what was really important and crucial. So then I decided that now it would be a good time for me as well to make my own World War II system, since the some of the groundwork has been laid out already. It's not to say though that I didn't well, there wasn't really any World War II games being hosted on the Eastern Front. I don't think so, and none of them were definitely on this scale either. So there was still an empty spot in the market, you could say.
Mm-hmm. It's a very fast-playing system. I was very pleased with the pace of the game. I was also really happy with the depth of it. Like, this is a really in-depth scenario, and you made me do a lot of homework just to play. I guess, I mean, I could have showed up without doing my homework, but we would have lost horribly. So I probably put 3 or 4 hours of preparation in addition to the time spent with my subordinate, what do you call him, my adjutant, Tunis grad. And I guess that was a deliberate choice to make for a better game, but you simulated a lot of Soviet doctrine pretty well. I feel like you had us planning fire missions. I think a lot of people have this impression that you can get on a radio and call a fire mission when you see the enemy, and 5 minutes later the shells start landing, and that wasn't the case at all. Um, I thought that was a real challenge because I really just kind of had to create this plan or this script, and the team. I had to trust my subordinates to follow it, and there wasn't a lot of latitude. Um, why did you do that to me? why did you do that?
Yeah. First off, I think to show the viewers, I sent you in Discord as a private message your briefing again. If someone on the stream wants to quickly see that, I think you can show it on stream without
Yeah,
any
I'm pulling it up
problem.
right
And
here. Yeah,
yeah,
look at
so
this
you
thing.
can. Yeah, so I think it might be the longest briefing there has been in Kriegsspiel games so far. Oh, I'm not actually sure. I can't say that with confidence, but and Blazer Trail has suggested to me that maybe at some point I need to add a bibliography to the briefing because there's so much of it. But yeah, my philosophy for making Kriegsspiel games is basically I'm trying to use up always use more at least the unnecessary amount of time to make a scenario. So I did a lot of research and digging into World War II and also into this scenario. I wanted it to be as historically correct as possible. And of course, it's a big battle. In the briefing, it's a full infantry division, basically laid out. So there's a lot of formations to write up. But I think that just makes the game more interesting. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it really did. It had a lot of depth because I was in this position where I had to kind of plan everything out, and if anything went wrong, then there was no room for changing. There's no way to respond or react. And I think one of the big things was I had to kind of guess the timing of my formations because there were basically three fire missions that I set up, and we're getting into the scenario itself. But the first fire mission was to shatter the front line. The second fire mission was to support the breakthrough and kind of hit what I figured was the secondary line. And then the third fire mission, which was the largest fire mission, was to shatter what I thought would be their main line of resistance. And what ended up happening was I recognized that if anything went wrong, especially early on, the fire missions would land or splash, if you will, without the troops being anywhere nearby. And I wouldn't be able to do anything about it, and it would just be a waste. So I kind of gamed the system a little bit. I created these flexible fire missions where I would give an order, and I figured if I gave the order 30 minutes in advance, then that would give me some control. So the fire mission wasn't exactly at 8 o'clock. I could drop it at 7:45 or 8:15 if I needed to, and I think that kind of worked for the first two fire missions. But the first one, you put my pieces further back than I expected, which delayed them by 15 minutes. And then the second one went all right, but the third one more. I think the third one probably missed because my men were probably 30 minutes away from reaching the main line of resistance. Nonetheless, they were able to punch through, but it was really crazy hard to do that. But it was also a lot of fun. Did you put the Germans under any kind of restrictions like that? Like, did they have to pre-plan or prepare anything, or did they have a lot more flexibility?
Well, I tried to make the scenario as realistic as possible. So, like, the key thing here was simulating how these armies of the time would work in military doctrine, and the military doctrine between the Soviet Red Army and the German Army in World War II was quite drastic. So yeah, it was definitely as you found as the Soviet Red Army commander on the regiment level, you clearly noticed that it was quite everything had to be really carefully planned out beforehand. So that's how one way, for example, what's the difference between the Soviet and German armies is that the Soviet artillery in these great offensive operations is always really centralized and centrally led. You basically need to the only the very superiors in command can really affect what the bombardment and how it's conducted. Um, so that's one of the reasons I made it so you had to actually pre-plan everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to make a clear timetable for you. Meanwhile, the German commander they could call in artillery at any time from the batteries that were allocated to them, as historically, usually the Germans would German infantry division's organic artillery would be basically spread out between the battalions, and the battalion commander themselves could call in artillery whenever they needed it. So, meanwhile, the Soviets are really at the mercy of their superiors. They are supposed to do the plan as ordered, and usually, historically, these great offensive operations tended to go a bit simplified for the Soviets. Like the Soviet initial artillery barrage absolutely stuns and shocks the opposing enemy, and the infantry is able to break through their front lines. Or then the pre-planned artillery strike complete doesn't work at all. Maybe it misses the enemy, or
Hmm.
maybe it's wrongly positioned, and basically then the Soviet offensive just bounces off the opposing enemy defenses with high casualties for the Soviet army. So there was in the scenario. I think towards the end you were basically maybe thinking that in the live stream of yesterday's I watched it when you have been playing.
Hmm.
You said that it basically you were kind of fearing that maybe it was too easy for you, like it was really
Hmm.
the Germans were very much um, outnumbered in the scenario. But the thing is that if some of your if your artillery would have not been planned so well, and it wasn't as successful, the attack could have ended disastrously for you. For example, here near Molnica, we can see several. We can see basically a Soviet platoon um, in, in shatters as the artillery bombardment was unable to um, defeat to stun the German defenders in that area.
Hmm.
And of course, he sent the company commander of this company to attack with his one platoon towards the enemy defenses in the next line because his troops were taking so long to reorganize after this disastrous
Hmm.
attack.
Well, he also forgot to give them move orders,
Yeah,
which was astounding to me. So I had reason to suspect his loyalty, and basically gave him, an option of you can die for the motherland or you can, spend your days in the gulag. And he chose to die for the motherland, which I think was the correct choice.
yeah,
I tried to be kind of a very political German officer, not German, Soviet officer. Although I think by this time the Soviets were dialing down the politics because I think they had realized the year prior that the political stuff wasn't militarily effective, and they needed to dial that down and just let the actual competent military commanders run the show. And that's so maybe that's not entirely historic for 1944, but I just had a fun playing up that role. I invited Tunis Grad and Sam in here. Sam was the German commander, and Tunis was my adjutant, so he's the one who helped me with all of the planning. I want Sam to be able to, speak for himself and talk about his experiences a little bit, as well as Tunis. Hi, Sam. How you doing?
I'm doing good, and you?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on here, Sam. Sam, this is the one time where I went full Sam Miller against Sam Miller, and I guess I won. Um, Sam, just so people know who are watching the live stream, Sam is the mascot of the International Kriegsspiel Society, and he is a bold attacker. He is always attacking. I continue to attack. I continue to attack. And this time, I think the roles should have been reversed because um, Sam, you had to play a lot of defense. How hard was it to play defense?
It was really hard, I must say.
Hmm.
Um, I had many choices to take on the defense.
Hmm.
Um, because I had many trenches, and as people had pointed out yesterday, I could have just put some trenches to fool you, and so that you use your artillery on empty trenches.
Hmm.
But I did decide against that because I thought that would be a waste of trenches. because the high command had said that I have to make you bleed for every inch of ground you take,
Right.
since the second line of defense behind the Petzeri would have been way weaker than that. So I had to risk my troops getting shelled.
Yeah, I have to say,
Um,
I agree with your decision. Even though militarily it costs you, I think from a political perspective, if I had received those same orders, I would have done exactly what you did. So I think, from a political perspective, certainly, and based on your orders, I think you did what you were supposed to do. No shame in that.
yeah. Um, yeah. I also had received reinforcements on the day of the battle because we had more players.
Hmm.
So I kind of figured out you would probably come from the road, which you did.
Hmm.
So I had prepared more troops there in a second line of defense, so that when you attack, that my troops on the front line could retreat safely.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, your attack was too ferocious, which didn't help, and your artillery was also too strong for me.
Hmm.
Um, I also found that it was kinda unfortunate that I got hit by some artillery in the face, like in the head. So my second in command had to take over, and I was allowed to spectate. I found very interesting that he kinda managed to, I would say, he didn't savage the situation, but he figured out what I wanted to do. But when I read like the channels, I saw like that some of the subordinates had ordered retreats, not with no orders, like on their own,
Hmm. Yeah.
which didn't help, and which left the road open. So after that, we had no trenches anymore,
Yeah.
and I think after that, it was really not good for us.
Yeah. Well, I still think you did well with what you had. I think you made a lot of right decisions. I don't know how you could have won unless I had really messed up, but I guess I didn't mess up that much. But I can't take all of the credit. In fact, I have to say that Tunisgrad, who is here with us, did a lot of the work. He did a lot of work the morning of the battle and maybe even before. Tunis, what was it like preparing for this? All right, that's there you go. You have it from the horse's mouth. He might be
Yeah,
muted.
it's
There you are. There you are.
oh wow, I guess I was. Yeah, I think it's a credit to the system and the work that Otto's put into it that planning is so in depth and um and is required, especially on the attacking side. I guess
Hmm.
that in the early war it would have been the case for the Germans too.
Hmm.
That those bombardments are planned out in defensive positions or offensive lines. So yeah, it was a lot that you and I put into it.
Yeah, yeah, and I put a lot of work on you. I'm like, just handle it. Just handle it. But
Well, I think that's the hallmark of a good second in command or chief of staff is you are the brains behind the operation, and then the chief of staff sort of takes that and then makes your life easier.
sorry, we got Demeter going nuts. But anyway, yeah, absolutely. I also wanted to make sure you had, fun with it too, and that you had input, and I think you had very good input. You certainly helped me plan the fire missions, which were particularly decisive, which I greatly appreciate. And then you handling the situation on the left, I think was valuable, while I was simply sending one guy to his doom up the center. I was actually looking for Special Zindos to find out what he was doing on the right, and the battle ended right before I think I reached him. But yeah, that was it was a big help to have you there. Otto, why did you give us seconds in command? Why did you give us help?
Well, If you zoom out a bit on the or on the game map, you can see that there's a lot of resources the Soviets have. For example, the um, behind their lines they have quite a few artillery batteries near the starting point, a bit to the south if you move your camera. But basically, I thought that there was I wanted to make it so there would actually be a kind of hierarchy in the game. So we had the regiment commander, and then we had a sort of the battalion commander under them. But honestly, I thought it was really just needed because it was a lot of work, and I think I wish in more games we could maybe have more of this realistic command chain of command stuff going on, like we had in Carter's gigantic 100 player um, D-Day game. So
Yeah, I liked it. I liked having a second brain to help with the planning and all of the work. Um, and I think it would also be fun to be that second brain and to play. It's fun to play all the different positions. You know, I enjoy being in command, but I also enjoy being a subordinate. There are some days when all I want to do is follow orders. There are other days where it's just kind of fun to be in command, but also have to follow orders that are given to you and kind of wrangle with the limitations that are imposed upon you as a subordinate. It's all fun. It really is fun to play all of these different levels. And it's a credit to your system that each level is so enjoyable. We got some questions here. Let's see here. Achilles asked, did Sam get to decide where the trenches were placed, or were they already set? Sam, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I had to decide where the trenches get placed.
All right, good. And it looks like you made like three lines of defenses. I think one of the best placed trench networks in the game is actually, I don't know if it got used much. I'll highlight it here in yellow, but it's on this hill. I was really excited to see this one right here because this is on a hill, and I was like, I bet you he has an observation post up there, and I bet you he has artillery dialed in all along this open ground here. That I was dreading having to go in there. I was like, he is going to pulverize me. That was going through my mind. It didn't stop me from giving the orders. But I have to ask, did you have observers up there with artillery ready to go?
I had two platoons and one MG squad up there.
Mm-hmm.
I did expect you to attack there, but
Mm-hmm.
you attacked took quite a while, so by then I think we already had left the position.
Okay,
Um,
because that complemented this other trench here on your right and our left. And I didn't know how I was going to get around that. I figured because then there's the marshland on your right, so I wasn't sure how I was going to get this hill other than going with a direct assault. Which by this time, after coming, from all the way from here, we're tired. We're not going to do much direct assaulting by that point. So I was pretty scared about that. Sorry, I erased a line there, but I'm trying to erase my work. Um, but it turned out I think the battle ended and we kind of got lucky. But I just thought that was a masterful defense that you had prepared there, and then you had this main line here. Um, and I think that if you had more troops there, it would have been hard for us. And if you had a reserve back there to counterattack any breakthrough, it would have been a clear German victory. So, um, but I guess you just didn't have enough material to stop the Russian hordes. So, did you feel like you had enough men, Sam, or not?
Definitely not. I think High Command should have sent more troops. So I had looked up some German defensive tactics on Google,
Uh huh.
and I have found out some tactics that I could have used. So I used the strong point
Uh-huh.
tactic that the Germans also used historically. Like they would only use like instead of doing a straight line because they didn't have enough men to hold the entire front line, they did put some strong points that could support each other, so the Soviets can't just like go through the holes because then they would be shot at.
Hmm.
So I did that, and the hill was basically kind of that idea that the MG could shoot at you from the hill.
Hmm.
If I may add something from the umpire point of view, the
Yes.
Soviet artillery plan was pretty good counter to Sam's plan, which was defense in death, because every time Sam's troops fell back, they were most often so their first positions were initially bombarded, and after Sam retreated from their positions, because the Soviet artillery was kind of planned in a sort of rolling barrage. The Soviet artillery barrage would move forward after the next 30 minutes or so, and then it would hit directly on the Germans in their new positions as they were getting ready, or while they were still en route to their positions. For
Hmm.
example, Sam himself was artilleried here in the left side of the battlefield during as he was I think reorganizing his men for a new defense.
Mm.
So it was really well planned in that part. It really followed the um, German um, defense in depth, the artillery, the rolling barrage of the artillery. So great job for Tunis and Marshall for that, and also good job for Sam for trying to do a defense in depth. Maybe if he would have just stayed in one place, he could have been just bombarded for the whole game. But it really depended on the Soviet artillery plan.
Hmm. Well, yeah, it was. I planned it that way. I figured that as the infantry advanced, he would be pushed back, and it was just a matter of trying to get the timing right. And I guess we got it. We got the first two right. It was the third one. I think we were probably off by about 30 minutes, or at least the infantry lagged behind. But apparently, the artillery landed when the Germans were there, which is kind of the more important thing. I just I regretted that I didn't have infantry ready to follow up the barrage immediately. Still, apparently, it was sufficiently effective that although it cost my infantry a little bit when they made the assault, they were still able to punch through, and that was that. Um, Otto, what is next? What is next for this scenario? You mentioned maybe a follow-on scenario, and then what is next for your system? Do you have plans of maybe running a grand campaign or anything like that?
All right. So next for so I was planning for this to be a follow up. For this to have a follow-up battle to kind of make the players perhaps play smarter. I think that likely influenced some of um, Sam's tactics as strategy as well. For example, he didn't want to fight to the death, so he planned a defense in depth.
Mm.
As such, he still has, I think, a company's worth of troops at least, which might be able to put up a defense on the next line of defense near Petseri. So the follow-up battle after this might be things might be even worse for the Germans because now they have lost their most well-defended defensive line. Historically, the German defensive line in this area was really strong. In its front, and the next line of defense near the Piusa River was mostly unfinished. So things didn't end up quite well. Actually the town of Petseri was captured on the next day, on the 11th of August. So we'll see if the Soviets will keep up to stay in their real life schedule in the scenario. But anyways, yeah, I'm going to definitely reuse this module for a few times. We have yet to play in the entire sector of the 30th Grenadier Regiment, which was a neighboring regiment historically to the 12th Luftwaffe Feld Division. So we might see some tanks over there, and that's where when we come to my system, I'm going to take some time now to not really make another module, and instead I'm going to focus on how would you say, I'm going to write up the rules in a nice handbook so new umpires can really quickly um, or can more easily learn the rules and come umpire in games. so we can get some new umpires, and hopefully we can get some new new game hosts as well. So maybe I can get to play as well. But yeah, that's currently what I want to do. I've hosted quite a few School of the Umpire sessions, and
Yeah.
I've not only now realized that instead of teaching people in person in these umpire lesson sessions, I could really just write up everything into a rule book like any war game
Mm-hmm.
rule set maker.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, you want to play. I mean, that was my thing is I want to play. I just got tired of umpiring. But I don't know. I've not completely got away from umpiring, and I don't think you will either, Otto. But yeah, we definitely want to play. I do want to push some T-34 tanks. See if I can't get Achilles to team up with me, and he can give me some training on how to push a tank across the map. I think he read a book about it somewhere, and I think that would be fun to partner up with him and steamroll somebody with some tanks. Um, that would be fun.
Or maybe you will be on the opposite side this time.
Maybe we'll see. But yeah, this was a good time. I want to thank everybody for being here, especially Otto for coming up with all of this. And as much homework as I put into planning for the battle, along with Tunisgrad, I'm sure Otto put way more into it. He's been running this system for several weeks now to wide acclaim in the IKS. I want people to know that you can get in on these games. He runs these games during the week, so you just kind of have to come into the International Kriegsspiel Society channel, see when the games are being run, and join them. Click on events, and you'll see all of our games. I want to thank Tunis, who was my trusty second in command, for all of his help and work in planning and preparing and making this a fantastic experience. I also want to thank Sam for being a noble and gallant adversary and for coming on the show and doing a great job. So, thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who is watching. You will see today, because I teased about it, I have to make a plug on the mugs. We've got our Kriegsspiel mugs. You know, I'm drinking my coffee this morning out of mine. And if you want to learn more or access any of these resources, you can go to www.kriegspiel.org. You can find our website there, everything about us, all of our resources. We're fixing to do an update on that website probably in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. Next week, I'll be in Los Angeles running an in-person Kriegsspiel, so there will not be a Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel next week, because on that day I'll actually be running a live in-person event. But I will take pictures, and I will give a bit of a report to the community on the days following. So I want to thank you all for being here, and that's it for now. We will see you on our next adventure.